Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, coming to you from the Overflow Room and reminding you, please check out the ClassicsToday.com merchandise shop, where you can get mugs and water bottles and t-shirts and hats and just all kinds of nifty things. Our biggest seller is still the t-shirt that says, "Abnormal is fine, stupid is not." I'm so happy with that one. Anyway, and by the way, we do ship to everywhere because we've gotten orders now from Australia and from Europe, and it's all doable. We have an international supply fulfiller company thing that does that. I'm just so excited that we have that kind of international reach because we have an international audience. And speaking of international reaches, I want to talk to you about a disc I actually reviewed on ClassicsToday.com, but I want to talk about it here and give you a few samples because it is just marvelous. It's this disc of Martinů orchestral music on Supraphon, featuring the Prague Radio Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Tomáš Netopil. It's really, really good. And it's good for a number of reasons, not because just the music is fabulous, which it is. It's astonishingly wonderful, fascinating music, which we'll talk about in a minute, but also because of the way that it's put together. This disc, here's the disc, contains his Overture from 1953. It's just called Overture. It's a fascinating work because he wrote it and then he forgot all about it. And then when you heard it, he didn't remember it any better. He had no idea he wrote it. It's just a delightful 6 minutes and 42 seconds of neo-Baroque chuggery with some good tunes in it. It's delicious. And then we have the Frescos of Piero della Francesca, which have been recorded quite a few times. Really, seriously, quite a few times. And then the Rock, as in Plymouth Rock, believe it or not. Yes, it's a tone poem inspired by ideas of voyage to freedom, according to the composer. And if you hear that, then good for you. Sounds like Martinů to me. And the Parables, and then the Estampes, the prints. They're called prints. They're based after, prints, pictures that he saw, and the parables are based on sort of poetry. The frescoes are based on frescoes, and we don't have to go into any of the details about what they're based on because they all just sound like Martinů in his late style. This is basically, this disc, the sum total of his orchestral music in the last 10 years. Let me see, 9 years. What's the earliest work here? No, the last 6 years of his life, because he died in 1959. So this is 1953, and then the Frescos are 55, and that's 57, 57, and 58 that he wrote at the very, very end of his life, in his most mature style. And what an amazing style it was. Now we get to talk about the music with some samples, because it really is, if the mark of a great composer is that they have a personal style, an unmistakably personal style, which is coherent and self-sufficiently expressive and outgoing and accessible in the sense that, I don't mean easy. I mean that it speaks to people. That's a great composer. And Martinů was unquestionably one of the 20th century's great composer. He wrote tons and tons and tons of music. And over the course of his career, his style evolved from a sort of French Impressionist style to a hardcore jazzy style in the 1920s when he was in Paris, to his neo-Baroque style when he wrote lots of concertos for every possible combination of instruments in a very sort of motoric neoclassical rhythmic style, to his late style, which began when he came probably to America somewhere around there in the 1940s. He wrote his 6 symphonies, 6 of them, and they are magnificent. There's a video about them. You really should listen to the symphonies. I may actually talk about them individually. They're that good and that distinctive. They need to be given some serious treatment. And then along with a lot of other pieces, concertos and other orchestral works, all at the same time, and tons of chamber music. There's, I don't know, what are there's a Martinů number here. It's an H number. Here we go. And the last work here are the prints, Estampes, and they were his H number 369, which gives you some idea of just how much music the guy wrote. So it's just a huge, bountiful output. Not everything is a masterpiece, as with all composers who are hugely prolific, but the level of quality is consistently high. And the important thing is that the level of personality and character is consistently high. Now, his late music, I call bubbles and bugs. Yes, bubbles and bugs, which is my affectionate way of saying that a lot of it sounds like it's underwater, with waving fronds of seaweed and bubbles in an aquarium rising to the top. And then the bugs, insects, nature noises, nocturnal noises, quite similar to what Bartók was doing, although not as dissonant, but equally disturbing and quite hauntingly nocturnal and fabulous. It really is just, Martinú's seminal work is his opera Giulietta, which is subtitled, The Key to Dreams. And he had this obsession with sort of dream states or hallucinatory imagery. And boy, do you hear that in this late music. You really, really do. Let me give you an example of what it sounds like. First, we'll start with the opening of the Frescos of Piero della Francesca. You can go look at Piero della Francesca and then listen to some of this if you think it's going to help. But the opening is bubbles. It's just bubbles. It's this dreamy, drifty, underwater. That's how it sounds to me. And then insects, insect noises. It's just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So here's a little bit of bubbles and bugs. Get it? And then let's do a little bit more of the meaner side, of the bugs. This is the last movement of the Parables, which is quite fascinating. And one of the things about him is that it sounds like he's doing things that are just sort of textural, athematic textural patterns. But then the music is always so rhythmic. He manages to do music that's dreamy, but it has an undercurrent, a substantial undercurrent, a rhythmic vitality that never lets it just lapse into like nothingness. It never just lays there like a puddle. It always moves, possibly also because his rhythm was really, really niftily syncopated constantly. It's ta 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 ba ba ba. I mean, I played all of his symphonies in our community orchestra when I was repertoire person. I forced them to do them, but we did a bunch of them, and my goodness, they were wonderful but difficult, very, very difficult, especially for the string players, because you got to count constantly. Everything is off the beat, and that's what gives the music its constant feeling of forward motion. then there's also a tremendous lyrical impulse, beautiful singing, folk-inflected Czech melody that he was always into in his career, and also some music that's genuinely menacing, really menacing. The finale of the Frescos is really kind of threatening. He was very, very careful or cautious in his use of heavy brass, although he often uses the trumpet almost as a woodwind instrument, as a soloistic type instrument. But listen to the finale of the Frescos and you'll see what I mean. This is menacing. It really is. Great science fiction movie music. I always thought that, you could hear like the nuclear reactor going into meltdown mode when you listen to some of these pieces, but they are exquisite and they don't all sound the same. It's recognizably the same composer, but his feeling for color and the overall trajectory of each work is unique to that work. Listen to the finale, for example, of the Prince, of the Estampes, and you'll see exactly what I mean. It's just, you've never heard scoring quite like this. It's really very, very special, I think, and beautiful too. One of Martinú's, slogans or sayings was, I see no point for the technical and aesthetic expression of torture. What we need most are calm thoughts, logically expressed. If that was his, feeling, you get a sense of that here. That, however exciting the music gets, and it has extremely exciting moments and incredibly evocative moments, sounds that you'll never hear anywhere else. His overall trajectory is always towards peace, towards calm reflection, and this dreaminess, dreams of beauty, of far off sometimes beauty. It's extraordinary music. It really is. And this performance, this disc, featuring the Prague Radio Symphony under Tomáš Netopil with his late orchestral works, is just wonderful. And I think all of you need it. You definitely need it. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope this incentivizes you to get out there and get some Martinů. So keep on listening, folks. Thanks for joining me. Oh, wait, there's more. There's one other thing I wanted to point out. I'm sorry. Let me point it out. One of the reasons I did this talk in the overflow room, I just want to say, is because there's a lot of overflow. I said it's wonderful that all this stuff comes together on this disc. The Supraphon has got this music over and over again. They've got the Frescos by, Charles McHarris did a version of them, but they've got the earliest one is by Anshirl, and they've got all this stuff by Bielohlavek, including the Estampes and the Parables. And they're out of print, and they're in print, and they're coupled differently. This Anshirl one, which was coupled with Symphony No. 5 and the Memorial to Lidice originally. Now the Parables and the Frescos were coupled to Janáček Sinfonietta in the Anshirl Gold Edition. They float around, and they float around as like fillers or couplings to other things. And so it's really good to have one disc devoted to all of them. And these performances are as good as any of the others, in case you were wondering. So let me just make that point. And with that, I will sign off. So thanks again, folks. Take care.